Sounds of the night. Growing up for me has been tough. It seems as the years go by, it only gets worse. A little backstory on my sad life is I was given up by my biological mother nearly 2 weeks after I was born in a hospital in Washington, D.C. She didn't know who the father was. I came to know the truth when I was about 10 years old, and I kind of wished I had died in the womb. My mother was a prostitute and a heroin addict. Perhaps my existence was related to a one-night stand from a random client. She was still taking drugs while pregnant with me, and is the cause that I've had cases of isolated seizures. One time in 7th grade, the whole class was told to silent read. As I was holding my book open, all I remember is my vision tunneling in and grabbing on to the desk. I ended up waking up, finding myself on the ground with my desk toppled over and my chair flipped on its side. Some kids were snickering, while others looked scared. My teacher, Mrs. Stawning, helped me up and took me to the nurse's office. Since then, I've been moving from place to place in the foster care system. You really don't know what that is like unless you experience it for yourself. Let me paint you a picture. Some caseworkers assigned only care about making money and sometimes cut deals with foster homes. They both benefit while the kids just suffer. I've been in houses with as many as 8 kids at a time. I remember sharing a room with 3 other boys. The house was pretty much a mess unless a social worker was sent for inspection. We then all had to spruce it up. The food was awful. Mostly canned and frozen stuff, junk food, and I think Christmas time was the only decent meal I had. I guess it was because there was an inspection around that time too. There were lots of presents under the tree, but only to fool. Majority were empty boxes wrapped up. There were only 1 present each we got that consisted of personal care items like shampoo, soap, deodorant, toothbrushes, toothpaste, disposable razors for shaving, cheap cologne or perfume, socks, underwear, gloves, a scarf, and a measly $5 bill. These items were supposed to last us until the following Christmas. I was there for 2 years. None of us were given any toys and such. We were told to smile and lie and say that everything was good. Otherwise, we would be threatened with a belt or told that something terrible would happen to us. None of us tried to even find out what that terrible thing could have been. Eventually, we were all displaced in different homes across the country when our teachers were complaining about poor hygiene. The fact that some of the kids had lice while others had bad odors from not showering for weeks and wearing the same clothes to school nearly every day was a red flag. Most of the money the foster parents were getting went on their personal splurges, like lottery tickets, alcohol, expensive cut meats like Wagyu beef, manicures, you name it. I was glad to go somewhere else. Any place would be better than this hellhole. I didn't have many friends, because most people thought I was gay since I hung out with girls more. I was straight, but even if I was gay, I don't see why my sexual preference mattered. One time in 10th grade, I remember punching a guy named Lenny Fitzgerald who was teasing me about charging $3 for hand jobs in the boys' bathroom. The principal said to me, "Jordan, I don't see why you would resort to violent behavior. You're a great kid. Your grades are exceptional. You are the small percentage of youth with your background who have potential of making something with their lives. Don't let this path lead you down a dark road. I understand you may have felt hurt and personally attacked, but there was no reason to take your anger out on a classmate." The thing is, Principal Crawford didn't understand. She made it seem like Lenny was the victim. I had to apologize and was suspended from school for 2 days. He wasn't asked to do a thing. If you wondered race had something to do with it, it was true. The principal was white, so was Lenny. I was black. But not all white people use their power to hurt. Some actually believe in treating people equally, regardless of color. My foster mom, Kelly, from grade 10 to the summer of grade 11, was like that. She was the one who spoke to me like a human, acknowledged my side of the story and the pain I had felt being bullied. She did make me realize, though, that I should have spoken to an adult first, that the best choice would have been her. Maybe the situation would be much different. I was comfortable calling her my mom rather than by her first name, which I did with the other 5 homes I was previously in growing up. One day that June of my grade 11 year, I was at the local library waiting for her to pick me up. School was out since last week and I didn't have to return until the fall. I had signed up for the summer reading program. I was also looking forward to researching what I would like to do after graduation. It was 5 p.m. and it began to rain hard. Kelly worked as a massage therapist at a clinic not too far from the library. She was probably finishing up with a client. It wasn't until 5:30 I decided to give her a call on her cell. There was a man on the other side who answered. "Hi, this is Officer Sharp." My instincts thought of the worst-case scenario possible. "Hi, this is Jordan. I was just calling my mom to see what time she would be coming to pick me up." "Hello, Jordan," he said, and without responding to my question, he asked what my location was. He told me he knew exactly where that was and for me to wait there. It was roughly 10 minutes later I saw a police car roll up to the side of the curb. I pushed through the glass revolving doors and briskly walked through the rain with my bag of books in one hand. I opened the back of the door of the police car and got in. Officer Sharp gave a pleasant hello and handed me a cup of hot chocolate from Herman's coffee shop. I thanked him, but wasn't thirsty. I just wanted to know where my mom was. "Jordan, you may be wondering where Kelly is," he said. I nodded my head. "Well, I don't know how to say this, but Kelly was in a car accident. She was hit by a pickup truck. Her vehicle spun off the road and hit a telephone pole. She's been rushed to the hospital." And that's where we're actually headed right now. My gut was right. The worst had happened. Tears began to well up in my eyes as I said, "Is she going to be okay?" "I hope so, son," he said. "We can pray that the doctors will take good care of her." We got to the hospital and were seated in the emergency room waiting area for what seemed like hours. When the doctor approached us finally, he had a solemn look on his face. "Good evening," he began. "We really tried to stabilize Kelly, but she had lost too much blood. I'm sorry." And just like that, I was all alone again in the world. Officer Sharp held on to me until I stopped crying. I spent 2 nights alone in a house that had brought me so much happiness. I couldn't sleep and struggled to eat. I didn't feel like writing a speech for my mom's funeral. I wondered if there was a God, how could he take someone as sweet as Kelly away? Why couldn't it be my biological mother instead? She had sinned the most. But I was sure somehow she was already dead. Friday morning, there were so many cars parked at the funeral home. It was nice to see that so many people loved her. As my mom lay in her casket, I looked at her face. It was as if she was sleeping peacefully. That was a beautiful imagery I would remember forever. After a few scriptures from the Bible were read, I was called up by Father Matthews to say a few words. I made my way to the podium and took a deep breath before speaking. "Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the foster child of Kelly. She was kind, giving, a hard worker, and loved me like I was her own. I was immediately drawn to her, and it just felt right to call her my mom. My mom told me she couldn't have children of her own, and after a difficult long-term relationship, she wasn't looking to settle down and bring a man into the picture. She was happy with the life with just the two of us. And I was okay with not having a dad. It didn't feel like I was missing out on anything, as my mom played baseball with me. She showed me some woodworking crafts and home renovations. These 2 years were the best moments of my life. I don't know where I will go after this, but the time I did get to spend with her was a blessing. She was a huge part of my heart, and I hope wherever she is, that I'm in her heart too. I sniffled as the tears rolled down my cheek. "Thank you," I said, and then I went and sat back down. The burial was even harder as her casket was placed into the hole in the ground. Everyone proceeded to leave. I didn't have a license, so I was on my way to take the bus when my mom's coworker Margot offered to give me a ride. Once we got to the front of the house, I asked her if she would like something to eat or drink. She told me that I had great manners, but she had to head back into work, and told me to take care of myself. I went inside and took the stairs to my room. I took off my suit and put on a pair of loose-fitted jeans and a baggy plain t-shirt. I sat at the edge of the bed. My head hurt from all the crying. I needed to take a nap, but I just couldn't. It's like I had so much adrenaline in me. Maybe it was the anxiety of the unknown. Where does my story go from here? My thoughts were interrupted by the ring of the doorbell. I looked outside my window and saw a police car and a red Toyota Corolla parked in the driveway. I had a feeling I knew what was going to happen next. I opened the door. It was Officer Sharp with my caseworker, Charles. "Hey, Jordan," said Officer Sharp. "Could we come in for a bit?" "Of course," I half smiled. I let both men in and we sat in the living room. "Would you guys like something to drink? I got some sodas and bottled water, or I can make you some coffee." "That's polite of you," said Charles. "I'll have a soda." "I'll take a soda as well," said Sharp. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed 3 cream sodas from the fridge. I went back to the living room and handed out the drinks. I then sat down on a stool facing the couch where they were sitting on. "Okay," began Charles. "I'm here today to talk to you about Kelly, as well as what we're looking at in terms of your living conditions. Now, your mom had written a will prior to her passing, and you are included in it. It states that her home and all her belongings will be transferred to you. She also had an insurance policy which covered her funeral costs and paid off this home. There is a sum of money to send you to college or the university of your dreams. If you got a part-time job, you'll be able to live a fulfilling and comfortable life. However," said Charles, "from your file, I can see that you are not 18 yet." "I'll be 18 in 6 months," I said. "Unfortunately, by our regulations and the law, we can't process your request until you're an adult, which is 18. For the time being, we'll have to temporarily place you in a foster home." "No, no, no," I cried. "Please don't do that. I can't go back to the system." "I'm sorry, son," Officer Sharp interrupted. "I know that all of this is sudden and unexpected, but I assure you that this next family Charles has found is just as kind and loving as Kelly was. They have had numerous success stories with the kids they've taken in, and I've done a thorough background check. You'll be fine. 6 months will fly by." I buried my head into my arm to wipe the tears. "I guess I have no choice," I said. "Where will I be going?" "Please don't tell me it's far." Charles took a deep sigh. "Well, it's not in Philadelphia per se. It's in Missouri." My eyes widened and voice raised up. "Missouri?" I exclaimed. "That's in a whole other city. I won't even be able to walk outside this house or visit my mom's grave if I was having like a bad day. This isn't fair." Charles kept apologizing. "When do I leave?" I asked. Officer Sharp replied, "In 2 days. If you need help of any sort, I would be happy to make some time for you." "You'll be flying out on the 4th of July at 3 p.m., said Charles. "Do you have any questions?" "No," I replied sternly. "All right then," said Officer Sharp. "We'll be heading out now. If you need anything or want to just chat, here is my number." He handed me his card with his personal number on it. "Jordan," said Charles, "you have my number already. You know you can call me anytime, okay?" Both men left the house. As I locked the door and I went back to my room, I spent most of the night crying. The next morning, I barely could open my eyes as I brushed my teeth and walked into the kitchen. I was so thirsty I drank 4 glasses of water before grabbing my suitcase from the storage room downstairs. I packed lots of shirts and a few jeans, my towel, a lot of snacks and hygiene products. Charles and Officer Sharp can say they did all their research, but they have never seen what it's like to live in a foster home with sneaky, money-hungry people. I wasn't going to take that chance. I made sure I had all the things I needed to survive the 6 months. I closed the suitcase and carried it to the top of the stairs. I picked up my backpack and put in my electronics, my Apple tablet, headphones, chargers, wallet, with all my personal identification information, passports, and a picture of my mom from last Christmas. She was wearing a green flared dress with presents and candy cane patterns. Her beautiful long blonde hair and light blue eyes just stood out in the picture. I fought back the tears and zipped my bag. I had 1 more night left here. I didn't do much that day besides walk throughout the house, touching everything and thinking of the memories with Mom. I watched some TV and ordered a large meat supreme pizza. I popped open a can of cola. The fizziness made me burp. It was past midnight when I retreated to my room and went to sleep. I woke up the next morning at 8 a.m. to the sound of my cell phone ringing. It was Charles. He was just checking in to see if I was packed and ready to go to the airport, that he would be picking me up at 12:30 p.m. and dropping me. I responded with, "I'm ready and waiting." Time seemed to be moving fast when I heard a knock at the front door. I turned off the TV and tried to calm my nerves. I grabbed my suitcase and backpack and went downstairs. Charles was standing outside with a smile on his face. He helped me load my bag into the truck of his car, and I opened the passenger seat door and got in. I buckled my seatbelt, and Charles turned on the ignition. We drove away as I saw my house disappear in the distance. "Hungry?" asked Charles. "I don't really have an appetite, but I sure could eat something," I replied. Charles pulled up into a McDonald's drive-thru window and ordered 4 egg and sausage breakfast sandwiches, 4 hash browns, and 1 large black coffee for himself and a Coke for me. "Eat up," he said. I slowly took a bite from my McMuffin. "So," he began, "do you have any questions for me?" "Yeah, I do," I said. "What will happen to my house when I'm gone?" "Well," he said, "I'll be checking in on it every few weeks, and Officer Sharp will do some patrolling as well." "Missouri is quite a ways away," I gestured. "You used to visit us like once a month. How will that work?" "Great question," he smiled. "We do have a sister company out there. I can appoint someone to visit on my behalf. But if you feel more comfortable with me, since I know a lot about you already for many, many years, I do have the option to come out here once every few months. To be honest, I would actually prefer you visit. It's just I'll be around strangers all the time. It'd be nice to meet someone I already knew." "Sounds good," said Charles. "I'll make a note of that." We pulled up to the airport gate. "All right," he said. "This is it. Remember, I'm 1 call away. Don't hesitate to reach out." He gave me a hug and helped me put my luggage on a cart and waved goodbye. I shook back the tears. I had to be strong. I checked in and shortly after boarded the flight. Although it was a short travel, I managed to squeeze in a quick nap. The moment we landed in Missouri, I felt the anxiety kick in. I sat patiently waiting for the other passengers to get off before I got up. "Thanks for flying with us," said the stewardess as I exited the plane. Charles had told me the parents would be holding a sign with the name The Grady's on it. I took the escalator down and got to the receiving terminal. I spotted a white couple dressed in semi-formal wear holding a sign saying The Grady's. I walked towards them, and before saying my name, the man said, "You must be Jordan." "Yes," I replied. "Welcome to Missouri," the woman said, smiling in her summer dress. "We're happy to meet you." The man helped me with my luggage and loaded it into the back of his gray Ford F-150. "My name is Giles," he said, "and this is my wife, Amelia. We heard you love to read. We have a whole library of books at our place." "Can't wait," I said politely. "We've lived in Springfield, Missouri for our whole lives, and let me tell you, Jordan, you will have so much fun here. Everyone is just so pleasant. We're like a family," Amelia said with such excitement. The drive was about 8 minutes from the airport to the Grady's house. We turned onto Wildwood Drive. Their house was at the end of the street. "We're home," said Amelia. We got out of the truck. Giles helped me with the luggage into the house. There was a staircase that led upstairs, and one that went downstairs to the basement. He closed the door behind him and left the bags by the entryway. "How about we get a bite to eat first before giving the tour and setting you up in your room," he said. "Okay," I replied, even though I was still full from breakfast earlier. We took the short flight of stairs, which stopped right in front of the living room. There was a skylight in the center of the room, which shone on the velvet floral printed couches, which were fairly outdated, possibly from the 80s. The walls were an eggnog color. The floors were wooden and creaked. The coffee table was also made of wood and carved in a 4-leaf clover shape. Everything looked old except for the flat-screen 65-inch TV. That was definitely from the current time. There were indoor plants scattered throughout, adding some color to the space, and compared to the other foster homes I've lived in, it was very clean, just like my mom Kelly's home. The kitchen fell to the right of the living room, and I heard clanking of dishes as I walked in. "Pull up a chair," said Amelia. She brought a fry pan over and dropped some bacon strips, mini potatoes, refried beans into my plate. She opened the oven and took out a casserole dish. She scooped out some mac and cheese and kind of plopped it into my plate. She poured a glass of orange juice with ice and placed it next to me. "Dig in," she insisted. The food was just as delicious as it looked. I really appreciated a home-cooked meal. My mom Kelly found cooking to be therapeutic, and boy did she make some amazing dishes. Shortly after, Giles walks in, smiling. "So, son, how's the food?" "It's really good," I replied. Amelia passed him a plate and immediately dug into the macaroni. "One of the best macaroni casseroles I've ever eaten," he said. "Thanks, dear," said Amelia. After the filling lunch, I offered to wash the dishes, but Amelia gave me a confused look, saying, "Well, aren't you a gentleman, but I'll take care of this. Why don't you go along with Giles for that home tour?" "Sure," I said. We took about 10 steps to the next level of the house. It had 4 bedrooms upstairs with one main bathroom and another one in the ensuite. Each room was covered in pink and white striped wallpaper. There was mixed and matched bed sets. If anything, the house needed was a makeover. We walked back to the middle level, which had the kitchen, living room, laundry room, and also a powder room. We then took the staircase down into the basement. There was a separate entryway into the basement. Perhaps it could have been rented out for extra income back in the day, but for now, I could see it was barred off with latches and locks. The first thing that caught my eye was a living room, completely carpeted with minor stains. The wall surrounding it was covered in bookshelves with books. It literally felt like a section in a library. Next to that was a mini kitchen with a sink, stove, and fridge. Right across from that were 2 bedrooms similarly furnished like the rest of the house. In between the bedrooms was a full-sized bathroom. There was a window between the kitchen and the living room. It overlooked the backyard, which had a small tool shed on the far left and a medium-sized underground pool. The area was closed off with a waist-height chain-link fence. Not that they needed anything higher, as directly beyond that was nothing but woods. Thank God for the blinds. I wouldn't want to be looking out during the night into pitch darkness, let alone imagining what supernatural entity was staring back at me, plotting its attack during my most vulnerable moments. "So," said Giles, "besides the outdated part, what do you think?" "You have a very spacious house," I said. "The bookshelf has quite the selection." "Yep," he laughed. "Amelia loves to collect books, and the other foster children enjoyed reading them. You'd think they'd be loud and running all over the place, but if you handed them a book, which was of their interest, they would be buried in it for hours. Not even a peep came out of them." "That sounds like something I would do too," I said. We heard Amelia calling us upstairs into the living room. I followed Giles and sat down on a love seat, while the two took a recliner each. "Jordan, we did hear a little bit about your previous foster parent. We were so sorry, devastated really, and wanted to help you out," said Amelia. Kelly's passing was still fresh. I tried to keep my composure as I replied, "Yeah, it was sudden and tough, but I'll get over it eventually." "So anyways," I said, changing the subject, "my caseworker Charles said you both were quite the parents to all the foster kids that stayed here." "Well, that's pretty kind of Charles, and I guess it's true," said Giles. "We usually had 7 kids at a time, as young as 8, that rotated out after 18 years old. We did this for about 29 years. All of our kids, worked hard at school," said Giles. "Amelia's a smart one. She would tutor them, and they got accepted into the school of their choosing. The kids loved it here," said Amelia, as if she was sitting there reminiscing those moments. "The best time was Friday night. It was double feature movies, where we all would huddle around a medium-sized television set and watch the latest blockbuster films on VHS. Giles worked past midnight most Fridays at a meat-packing factory. By the time he got home, we were asleep," said Amelia. "The job did pay well, and I was okay with having him work late." My eyes then fell on a framed newspaper clipping hanging behind the couple. The headline read, "The Gift of a Promising Future." "Wow, you guys were in the news," I said. I was pretty impressed. "Oh yes," said Amelia, without holding back any excitement. "Quite a few times, actually. It feels good to be appreciated by our community. We do take pride in God's work." "Enough of the self-praise," interrupted Giles. 6 months is probably the shortest time we've had anyone with us, but we'll try our best to make it feel like home." "Yes," replied Amelia. "We haven't had someone stay with us in about 3 years, so we're looking forward to spending time getting to know you." Giles reached into his pocket and opened up his wallet. He pulled out a crisp $50 bill and handed it to me. "What's this for?" I asked. "Just a welcome present. We have some great shops around here if you wanted to buy yourself some souvenirs." Thanks so much, I said. Now, said Giles, we wanted to ask you something. You can say no if you're not up for the idea, but every teenager we know needs their space, and Amelia and I were thinking about letting you get settled into the basement, sort of like your own apartment. We actually gave the same option to the other 17-year-olds that lived here before they moved out, kind of preparing them for adulthood when they wanted to live out on their own. Actually, I don't mind the offer, I said. When I leave to go back to Philly, I'll definitely be living on my own. This is going to be great practice. Wonderful, exclaimed Amelia. Giles will help you move your luggage to the basement. We got up from the couch and took my things that was sitting by the front door and moved it downstairs. We heard Amelia's voice echo from the second floor. I'll get started on dinner soon. Son, which room do you want to bunk in? One room was facing a window overlooking the pool and the creepy woods. The other didn't have a window at all. I'll take this one, I said. It was the room with no window. Giles smiled as he placed my things on the floor before walking away. He entered back shortly with a can of air freshener. Because it's a basement, it does get a bit musky down here. Just give this a spray every once in a while. We did have a mold problem a few years ago, but got a dehumidifier to help clean the air of the heavy dampness. If it gets bad, open the windows for ventilation, or just run upstairs and stay in one of the other rooms, he chuckled. No worries. Thanks, I laughed back. All right, I'll leave you to it. I have to help my buddy work on some drywall and insulation at his place. I'll see you at dinner. Sounds like a plan, I said. Giles left the room. I took a moment and sat on the bed. The Grady's weren't like the other bad foster homes I've been in. Maybe my mom Kelly guided me to them. I was very happy knowing I could have my own space while I learned some responsibility. I then unpacked and organized my things. For dinner, Amelia cooked a thick beef chili with a side of fresh-baked sourdough bread for dipping. There was a Caesar salad and shredded chicken. I could definitely get used to her cooking. It was simple but tasted like a restaurant. For dessert, there was a fruit parfait with layers of creamy custard in between. After dinner, I thanked the Grady's for a great day and excused myself to get some sleep. The basement was pitch dark except for a dim nightlight plugged in. I took it out of the socket and put on my phone's flashlight. I carried it into the bedroom and turned on the light. I plugged it into the wall. I shut the room door behind me and turned off the light. I crawled into the bed under the covers. It's not like I had a fear of the darkness. In my room back in Philly, I had one of those projector lights that scattered the imagery of stars all over my wall. It helped me relax and fall asleep. I had forgotten to pack it when flying out to Missouri. I guess this little light had to do for now. I turned my head slightly towards my mom's framed picture that I had placed on the nightstand next to me. I closed my eyes, and when I opened it back again, it was already morning. I got up and went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I changed into a pair of shorts and a light-colored t-shirt before heading upstairs to the kitchen. Amelia wasn't there, but I found a note on the counter that read, she went out shopping and that Giles might still be asleep. There's breakfast in the microwave. Enclosed was a key to the house in case I wanted to go out and explore the community. I took the breakfast out of the microwave, pulled out a chair and sat down. There were hash browns, 3 sunny-side-up eggs, a couple strips of bacon, 2 pieces of toast with refried beans on top, with a tall glass of apple juice. I gulped down my food and looked up at the clock. It read 9:30 a.m. I washed my dishes, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, then stuck my wallet and key in my pocket. I put on my plain white Nike high tops and went out the door. The sun was bright. As it hit my pupils, it made my eyes squint. The sky was also a bright blue color. No clouds in sight. It was slightly humid, but I was glad I had water with me to hydrate. I took a walk down the street and around a bend that merged into another street. I saw a girl outside, wiping down her bike. I smiled at her and waved. She waved back. Seeing that she wasn't creeped out by me, I walked up to her and introduced myself. I'm Nadia, she smiled. Nice bike, I said. Thanks, she replied. It's a Trek 820, excellent for riding gravel, pavement, and dirt. Yeah, and quite the pretty penny, I laughed. It is. It took me working 3 shifts a week at the local burger joint and 4 paychecks later to afford this. My parents are teaching me the value of money. She rolled her eyes. That's a good thing. Better to know now than to end up being a spoiled brat later, I joked. Nadia had a cool vibe to her. and she was pretty cute too. She leaned her bike to the side of the house, and we sat down on the curb and began talking. I told her about my mom, Kelly, and the reason why I was temporarily shifted out here. Nadia sympathized with me and gave me a side hug. I was a complete stranger to her, yet she was showing compassion. "So, the Gradys. You spent one night with them, eh? How has it been?" she asked. "Too early to tell," I laughed, "but I can see that they're caring. I mean, all those success stories with their past foster kids. Yep, our neighborhood has been on television a lot of times. Mrs. Grady actually is heavily involved in charity work within our community. She holds toy drives and occasional barbecues with donations going to hospitals to help sick kids." "Did they have any children of their own?" I questioned. "Or is that too personal?" "Well, my mom told me they had a 10-year-old daughter about 29 years ago. It was late November, and she was walking home from school at 5:30 p.m. There was a sex worker walking towards her in the rain. She was asking for money, but Trina, the daughter, didn't have any. Out of anger, the sex worker stabbed her in the neck with an empty needle. That needle ended up containing blood with HIV, which was transferred to Trina. The police tried to locate the woman who committed the crime, but it was as if she disappeared, no traces left behind. Trina died just a month before her 12th birthday. The Grady's only child was taken from them, but I guess they didn't want to feel alone and mourn, so they gave hope and a great life to helping other kids succeed," said Nadia. "A tragic story with a happy ending," I replied. Shortly after, Nadia's mom came out with 2 glasses of iced tea. "Hey kids, I saw you chatting through the window and thought you'd enjoy a cold glass of juice." "Thanks, Mom," said Nadia. "This is Jordan. He's staying with the Gradys for a bit." "Oh, of course," said Nadia's mom. "Amelia was telling me about it. She sometimes attends my wine and quilting classes. Pleasure to have you here." She then went back into the house. Throughout the summer, I had the same routine: waking up, eating breakfast, meeting up with Nadia. Sometimes I'd go bike riding with her with a bike aboard from Giles. On rainy days, she would come over and we would read books in the basement. One evening, a week before the start of my grade 12th year, I had returned back from a theme park with Nadia. I had an intense headache and decided to just take a shower and head to bed. The Gradys were headed out to a relative's wedding, which was about a 35-minute drive up north. They insisted I join them, but I told them I was pretty exhausted. I had their cell phone number in case something came up. I felt calm after my shower and within minutes was asleep. That night, I had the weirdest dream. It was of me from a bird's eye view watching me sleeping. But my sleeping body was surrounded by 5 shadows. The eyes were hollow and they appeared to be young women. One reached out to touch my arm, but I immediately opened my eyes. There was trickles of sweat pooling around my temples. I took a sip of the glass of water from my night table. I looked at the clock on my phone. It was 12:45 a.m. I then heard whispering coming from upstairs. The Gradys had just arrived back from the wedding. I tried to shrug off the dream and then went back to sleep. I ended up sleeping for the rest of the night. The next morning, Nadia and I went to the store to pick up some school supplies. "Can't believe you still have to go to a new school for 6 months," said Nadia. "Why couldn't they give you corresponding courses online until then?" "Trust me, I tried, but they thought social interaction will do me some good," I replied with sarcasm. My cell phone began to ring. The caller ID read Charles. I picked it up. "Hello?" I said. "Hey Jordan, it's Charles. How has your summer been so far?" "Pretty great," I said. "I made some friends." Great to hear, he exclaimed. "Now, I was supposed to come down here to do a check and formally meet your caretakers, but since you are a special case, they're allowing me to do a virtual call with them. I'll be coming down for sure during the winter break to bring you back home. I just wanted to give you the heads up." I won't lie, I was a little bummed, but responded with, "Sounds like a solid plan. By the way, how are things at my house? Is Sharp taking care of it?" "He sure is," replied Charles. "Everything is just the way you left it. Anyways, I'll catch you later. I have a couple more calls to make." With that, I hung up the phone. After checking out our school supplies, Nadia and I went to catch the latest Purge movie. It was around 10:30 p.m. when we left the theater. "Ever think that the government could allow one day where you are able to kill anyone and get away with it?" asked Nadia. "I believe it," I said. "It's called population control. I wouldn't be surprised if one day that law is introduced. There already is so much gun violence in this damn country," I said with a frustrated tone. "Would you kill anyone?" asked Nadia curiously. No way, I'd try to escape to a secret place where no one would find me for the 24 hours, I said. We got off the bus and I walked Nadia to the front of her house. Her mother was in the living room watching TV. The summer flew by pretty quick, she said. Incredibly fast, I said in disbelief. So what's the plans for tomorrow? Want to go bowling? I can't, said Nadia. I'm actually going up to my aunt's cottage for a few days. Really? I said with raised eyebrows. Yeah, I know you'll miss hanging out with me, but I'll be back in no time, she laughed. I'll be bored out of my mind. I might just read a few books until then, I grinned. I then leaned in and gave her a kiss on the cheek. Nadia gave a blushing look back as I turned away and walked towards the Grady's house. When I got to the house, I could smell something delicious coming from the kitchen. I saw Amelia taking out a large dish from the oven. It was lasagna. Hi, Jordan, Amelia said, looking up. How's the movie? Pretty good, I said. Wonderful, she replied. Why don't you sit down and get started on eating the Greek salad and some garlic bread while this lasagna cools down a bit? I obliged and began eating. Where is Giles? I asked. He's out having a few drinks with his buddy at a bar. He'll be back later, she said. Okay, I smiled. After dinner, I thanked Amelia for the meal and went to shower. When I finished, I got into bed and fell asleep thinking how boring the next little while will look without Nadia around. I'm not much of a light sleeper, but sometimes I can distinguish sounds happening in a dream versus real life. I was dreaming about escaping an alien invasion when I heard whispering in the distance. There was no one around me. The sound got closer and closer until I could hear what was being said. Wake up! Help us! Please! Please help us! There were multiple voices echoing the same words. I then felt a breeze blow in my ear. I woke up immediately. My eyes were wide open. I was just lying there in pitch darkness, as the night light bulb probably had burnt out. Sweat was trickling down my temples. I could hear my heartbeat. I quickly turned on the flashlight on my phone and shone it around the room. There was nothing in sight. I couldn't have dreamt that. But one thing was certain. It couldn't have been the wind. I had no window in the room. I tried to clear my mind of supernatural causes. The rest of the night, any slight noise and the adrenaline shot through my body. The next few days I occupied myself with reading books and leaving the afternoons on my bike to the corner store to get a Slurpee. I'd even watch short YouTube videos before dinner. Although I enjoyed myself, it wasn't as fun without Nadia. She did send me a couple of pics from her aunt's cottage. One was of her catching a large fish, and the other was of her around a campfire. She was having a blast. Labor Day was finally here. I wasn't excited to go to a new school as much as I was happy that Nadia was returning from a short trip. We'd made plans to buy ice cream and watch fireworks. It was 7 p.m. when I told the Gradys, who were seated in the kitchen having a drink, that I was heading out. They told me to have fun. I met Nadia at the ice cream shop. She instantly ran over and gave me a tight hug. She said, "Hi, Jordan." There were other customers around who briefly stopped and looked at us. We chatted about our trip as I paid for the cones, and we walked out to a park close to the high school I'd be going to. "Oh," she said, "I made you this while I was there." She pulled out a piece of intricately braided string. "It's a friendship bracelet," she smiled. It was a combination of black and blue, my favorite colors. "Wow, this is really cool." "Thanks," I said. Nadia offered to tie it around my wrist. "It's a perfect fit," she giggled. We lay a bedsheet on top of the grass and got comfortable. The fireworks began as a crowd of people increased. There's something so special about seeing different colors light up the night sky. Nadia laid her head on my shoulder and held my hand. My palms got a bit clammy, and I definitely had butterflies in my stomach. "You okay?" Nadia asked. "Yeah, I'm fine, just a little sweaty. It's pretty humid out here." I lied, but didn't want her to think I was nervous or anything. After the fireworks, Nadia's mom picked us up and gave me a ride home. I thanked her and then told Nadia I'd see her at school on Tuesday. When I got to the Grady's, I could see from the entrance that the TV was on. I told them I was back, and they asked if I wanted to join them for the movie, even though I could see they were snuggled up on the couch. I guess they probably preferred their alone time. "I'll pass," I said. Amelia asked, "Did you want me to fix you up a plate of food?" "No thanks," I replied. "It's pretty late and I'd just like to get some rest." "Okay, dear," she said. I went downstairs. As soon as I got to the bottom, I got a whiff of the unpleasant stench. I quickly grabbed the air freshener and sprayed the room. There's very little product left in the can. I didn't see any more air fresheners around. I thought I'd mention it to Giles sometime tomorrow. I felt like the stench still lingered, so I opened up the windows for ventilation. I changed into a pair of shorts and got into bed. I browsed the internet for a bit before putting my phone away and going to sleep. I was awoken by loud banging coming from the basement living room. Could it be an intruder, I thought? My heart was racing. I quickly grabbed a pair of scissors I had in my pencil case to protect myself. The sound seemed to be consistent. I couldn't hear any voices or footsteps. I decided to check out what the noise could be. I quickly bolted to the basement's nearest light and flicked it on. There was no one in sight. I finally was able to see what was causing the loud banging. It was a blind swinging against the window. Every few seconds, large gusts of wind sent the blinds flying up and then back down, crashing against the window. Before it could wake up the Grady's, I quickly lifted the blinds and slid the glass shut. I don't know why my eyes did this, but before putting the blinds back down, I looked into the distance to where the woods were. I saw something moving between the trees. It could have been more than one thing, but it made me feel uneasy as my stomach knotted. I felt that there were things looking directly back at me. I immediately put the blinds down and went back into my room. I kept the lights on that night with the covers over my head. I just kept telling myself, it could be little squirrels or forest animals. The first day of my last year as a high school student had arrived. I texted Nadia, who said we could walk to school together. It was about a 15-minute brisk walk. I tried to hide my nervousness, but I knew Nadia would have my back even if someone tried to start some crazy, stupid crap with me. Besides, I was only here for 6 months. I could put the fakest attitude on because I would never see these people again once I turned 18. Nadia and I had 2 out of the 4 classes together, English and phys ed. The other 2 classes was woodworking and chemistry. I sat in the back rows trying not to sound like a smart kid. I thought I'd let my test performance speak for itself. I didn't want any attention from the other students or to be part of a clique. For lunch, Nadia and I either sat in the cafeteria or went outside and walked a few laps around the school talking. Nadia had a few other friends, but she told me she rarely saw them because they were heavily involved in extracurricular activities, that most of their lunches were given up either organizing school events or playing intramural sports in the gym. I didn't mind that at all, because that meant I got to spend even more time with Nadia. I was contemplating whether to ask her out to the Hallows Eve school dance next month. "Hey," I said, "so you know that one of our favorite holidays are coming up?" "Yep," said Nadia, "Halloween. We better be staying up all night binge-watching horror movies." "For sure," I said. "It falls on a Saturday. We have to make it a tradition." But I actually was going to ask, Friday, which is the day before Halloween, we have a costume-themed dance. I was wondering if you wanted to go together. "Oh my god," said Nadia, "I would actually love that. Could we go as a duo?" "How do you feel about going as Jack and Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas?" she asked. "Who doesn't love a good Tim Burton classic film?" "I'm in," I said. The next few weeks, Nadia and I met at the school library to study for midterms. Most days were cloudy or rainy. Some might find it depressing, but for me, fall was a season I preferred over summer. The earthy smell in the air and sipping on hot chocolate was just so perfect. Some nights, I would join for dinner at Nadia's place, and other nights she would come over to the Grady's. Amelia loved having extra people over to feed. "Oh, Giles," I said, "I've been meaning to tell you, but I keep forgetting. I ran out of air freshener. Would you be able to pick up a few more?" "Did you check under the cabinet under the sink?" he questioned. "I had restocked a whole bunch right before you arrived during the summer." "Sorry," I replied. "I hadn't thought of it." "Not a problem," said Giles. "But if you run out of anything else, and you're low on anything else, let me know." "Sure thing," I said, nodding. After dinner, when I went downstairs and checked the cabinet, Giles was right. There were at least 12 cans of air fresheners. I grabbed one and walked around spraying downstairs. In no time, it smelled like autumn leaves with a hint of cinnamon. The day of the dance had arrived, and it seemed like everyone was more excited about tonight than paying attention in class. I mean, midterms were over, so we now had a solid few months until finals. It was a pretty good way to celebrate and de-stress from all that studying. After school, Nadia came over to get me ready for the dance. She looked fantastic as a ragdoll Sally. She told me to sit in a chair for what seemed like over an hour, where she precisely recreated Jack's features onto my face. When she was done, I was so stunned at the results. I told her she should get into special effects makeup one day. She laughed, saying, "Oh, it's just a pastime. Don't think I'll love it enough as a career." Giles and Amelia came downstairs to check out our looks. "Ooh, super spooky," said Giles. Amelia covered her eyes. "I'm gonna have nightmares." We all laughed. She offered to take a picture of us, and then they both went upstairs. It wasn't too chilly as we walked back to school for the dance. We stood in line as the teachers checked and patted us down to make sure we weren't bringing in drugs or alcohol. There was a DJ set up in the gym with lights. The decorations included fake cobwebs, bats, black cats. Everyone was either dancing or taking pictures. Nadia and I awkwardly danced a bit before a slow song came on. We got closer. She put her hands on my shoulders, and I put my hands on her waist. We were staring at each other when I took the opportunity and leaned in and gave her a kiss, which was on the lips this time, and it lasted at least 10 seconds. We were both pretty sweaty, and before there was a teenage body odor outbreak in the gym, we decided to ditch the dance and go out for milkshakes. "So," said Nadia without hesitating too much, "we've kissed twice, held hands. What's the deal? Are you planning to ask me out or what?" I nervously laughed. "I mean, we always go out. Do you mean to say if I would make you my girlfriend? Because I've been fighting those feelings." "Why?" she asked. "Am I that intimidating?" "Oh, hell no," I responded. "It's just our friendship is very important to me. I respect it. I don't want anything to happen if it means we can't be friends again. It's just going to be tough leaving you here and going back to the life I had before this." "Ah, okay, I get it," she said. "I understand. But how would we know if we didn't give it a shot? I'm at least 50% sure, Jordan, I'll still be your friend if it ends up being a bad idea." We both laughed. Amelia called my cell phone to see if I needed a ride back home as she wrapped up from a weekly charity meeting. When she arrived, I told her if it would be okay to also drop Nadia home. She was happy to do it. I told Nadia I would see her tomorrow for a horror movie marathon. When we got back to the Grady's, I took a long hot shower and made sure I removed all the face paint from my body. I texted Nadia goodnight with a wink, and she sent me a heart emoji back. I guess I finally had my first girlfriend. I exhaled slowly and closed my eyes. That night, after a long while, I had a nightmare. I was driving behind a car down a dark, narrow road. There were no streetlights around. The car stopped, and so I stopped behind it. A woman walked to the driver's side of the car. The window rolled down. She leaned in and seemed to be flirting with the driver. She was wearing fishnet stockings, a strapless black spandex dress which hugged her body. She was thin-built, with a short, angled bob haircut. Suddenly, a hand extends from the driver's side. The person is holding onto a gun. The woman tries to back away, but the trigger is pulled several times. The woman screams in agony as the bullet hits her in the face, one in the stomach and another in the neck. She falls to the pavement. The mysterious car drives off. I was horrified at what I witnessed and tried to pursue the car. As I'm driving away, I look in my rearview mirror. Covered in blood is a woman who was just killed before my eyes. She screams, "Help me! Help me!" I sat up straight in my bed, tears and sweat all over my body. What the hell was wrong with me? Ever since I've been here, I've been experiencing weird dreams on and off, or hearing and seeing strange things, and thinking like I'm being watched. I've been freaked out more times in this house in my dreams than any movie I've ever seen. The whole night I just lay wide awake in my bed. It was the first time in years that I was too afraid to sleep. The next day I had a bad headache. I felt like a hot cup of coffee would take care of it. It did, but temporarily. "Son, you look like you're still exhausted. Did you have a good night's sleep?" asked Giles. I didn't want to trouble the Gradys with my stupid dreams. Plus, I didn't want them to think I was a chicken to stay by myself downstairs, which they had kindly offered to me. "Yeah, insomnia," I shook my head. "Sometimes that happens to all of us at the most uncalled for times." "I'm with you," said Giles. "It's also during the times you really crave some rest, eh?" "Very true." Amelia walked into the kitchen with her coat on and purse over her shoulders, holding her keys. "All right, guys, I'm headed to the grounds for the Halloween haunt. We have a few bake sale booths set up for the children's charity we're fundraising for. If you need anything, call my cell. Giles, you'll be showing up for a bit tonight, right? Your support is very important to me. Of course, hon. I wouldn't miss it. And Jordan, will I be seeing you there? She asked. Actually, I said, I would have loved to have been there, but Nadia's coming over to watch some movies, and then I have a paper due Monday I want to finish this weekend. Oh, too bad, replied Amelia. We do run quite a few charities. The next one is for Thanksgiving, so I better see you there. I guess I'll leave out a bowl of candy that you could hand out to the trick-or-treaters. Of course, I said. You know, kid, we really admire academics and your focus on your studies. We'll be out of your hair, chuckled Giles. Shortly after Amelia left, Giles excused himself to go to the hardware store. Prior to Nadia coming over, I got to make some popcorn and grabbed a couple of sodas from the fridge. I took out some candy in a bowl and made sure the living room was neat. I found some throw blankets in the linen closet just for some cozy atmosphere. I heard the doorbell ring. It was Nadia. She was holding on to at least half a dozen DVDs. Come in, I said. We both walked to the living room. So, what movies you got? I asked. I thought we would go for some real slasher films, get the nostalgic vibes going, she said. We have Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the original, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Sleepy Hollow, and The Shining because Stephen King is a real genius. Great, I said. Nadia popped in the DVD. We both sat on different couches. Hey, if it gets real scary, I'm going to join you on your couch. I laughed. I bet $10 you won't last 5 minutes. You always seem to cover your eyes at the peak of suspense, missing the jump scares, I said. Well, yeah, said Nadia, because the music gives away what we were expecting. We were nearly 3 movies in when the clock turned 5 p.m. The doorbell started to ring. The kids were arriving for candy. Seems like we couldn't watch any more movies until after 8:30 p.m. because we would have to keep pausing the film and answering the door. I didn't mind that because I felt like I wanted to talk to Nadia about my bad dreams. Nadia, I kind of wanted to tell you something, but I don't know if you would think I'm weird or believe me. Try me, she smirked. As you know, I began, the Grady's let me live downstairs. Besides the weird smell from time to time or the mold, I've been experiencing strange things. I could see Nadia's eyebrows raise. I continued. A few times while I was sleeping, I would wake up from a bad dream. The recent one was of me witnessing a murder of a woman who was asking for my help. To come to think of it, I also heard voices in my ear one time repeating those same words. And don't get me started on the creepy woods behind the house. I feel like I'm being watched. I don't want to spook myself out too much, but it can't all be in my head, could it? Nadia paused for a moment. Well, from my point of view, you do read a lot of mystery crime novels and watch a lot, and I mean a lot, of horror movies. Not saying that it all could be a figment of your imagination, but it is plausible. I appreciated Nadia's logic behind my paranoia. Thanks, I said. Maybe I'll lay off murder mysteries and gory films for a bit. The next few months, things were pretty much the same, with the usual routine. Finals were coming up, so I had very little time for distractions and was studying most of the time. I didn't even read one novel and skipped out on the latest scary movies. My nightmares did subside. Seems like those were the 2 reasons that were the root cause for my paranormal dreams. I was pretty relieved knowing I could sleep in peace. On December 14th, Amelia told me my caseworker Charles had connected with her and that he would be on his way to visit on December 17th. That was the day after my last day of school. It was so surreal to hear that time had pretty much flown while here in Missouri. As the days progressed, I gathered my things and began packing them. In the meantime, Amelia would bake cookies, and the house was beautifully decorated with a fresh-cut spruce tree at least 6 feet high that Giles had brought home a few days earlier. I loved the smell of fresh gingerbread and hot chocolate. I spoke to Nadia on the phone, who told me it had finally hit her that I was going. She was very sad and wanted to see me as much as possible before I left. We had to discuss our long-term relationship as well. I truly hated accepting the reality of things, but she was right. December 17th arrived, and I was waiting for Giles to bring Charles from the airport. My suitcase was all packed up. Amelia gave me a box of cookies for the trip back, and I could see she had tears in her eyes, but she tried to cover it up. Nadia had also come over, but I could see that she had been crying for quite some time because her eyes were puffy and nose all raw from wiping it clean with Kleenex. Nadia and I went downstairs and chatted for a bit. So, Jordan, I realized in much of my life, if something is good, you kind of hold on to it. I've never felt the way I do with you around anyone else. I really like you. And pretty much life would be boring without you. You're just saying that because I'm irresistible, I joked. Maybe, she said, forcing a laugh before talking again, this time her voice cracking. I was looking into universities in Philly. I've always wanted to study further from home, get a different experience, and of course my independence. I found a program I really liked in the arts. It has excellent writing courses. I would love to venture into being a young adult book author. I was actually taken aback, but in a good way, of what I was hearing. Nadia was making the effort to travel away from her family, to not just study, but be closer to me. Well, that's fantastic, I said. I approve. I'll be your biggest fan and the first person to read your drafts and give you my honest opinion. I wouldn't want it any other way, she smiled. And then she leaned in and gave me the longest kiss that I had to stop because I felt like I needed a moment to breathe in air. Also, I said, you don't have to live on campus when you can stay at my house for free. Yeah, I figured that was implied, mocked Nadia. I then heard a familiar voice from upstairs. It was Charles. Jordan is downstairs, said Giles. Why don't you head there? I'll give Amelia a hand in the kitchen. You two will have an incredible Christmas dinner tonight. I heard footsteps come down the stairs. Hello, Jordan, said Charles. He walked up to me and gave me a hug. And who is this pretty lady, he said. This is Nadia, my best friend, and maybe something more, I said with a shy smile. Oh, haven't we done some growing up in the last 6 months, said Charles. You'll have to fill me in on our way back. Nice to meet you, he said as he shook Nadia's hand. So Giles told me that you were the king of the basement. Yep, I said, I've been holding it down well. I can see that, he laughed, but it's kind of odd smelling down here. Doesn't that bother you? You can smell that, I added, even with all this air freshener? Oh, yeah, it's quite strong, said Charles. I guess I kind of got used to it, I shrugged. Where are your bags? Asked Charles. I can help you carry them upstairs. They're in my room, I said. He and Nadia followed me to the room. As we removed the bag from the room, my eyes fell in front of the wall at the end of the bed, where the nightlight was plugged in. There was a pretty large crack that went from the outlet and stopped right before the ceiling. That was strange. It wasn't here before. I suddenly heard scratching coming from the wall as if something was trapped inside. Did you guys hear that? I said. Nadia and Charles nodded their head in unison. I put my ear up against the wall. There was definite scratching sounds coming through. Could be a pack of rats or something, I said. If it's vermin, the Grady's will have a tough time getting rid of them once they begin to multiply, said Charles. The smell in my room began to fill with a strong odor. I ran and grabbed an air freshener and sprayed the room until I felt like the stench was gone. We all single file went upstairs, and Charles told Giles what we had heard and that he felt there was a problem. For some reason, Giles and Amelia's reaction was something we didn't expect. Instead of showing concern, they were carefree and they said it was fine, they would deal with it at another time. That was strange. Charles even offered to call exterminators. Giles shrugged it off and said, it's the holidays. I don't want to remove the drywall and create a mess. But prolonging it could cause more damages, said Charles. Let it go, Charles, said Giles. This is my house. I will deal with it as I please. Amelia grimaced. Something seemed to be bothering the Grady's, and Charles wasn't having it. He excused himself to use the bathroom. While he briefly stepped away, everyone remained quiet as Amelia set the table. Giles went into the living room and came back with a wrapped present. This is for you, son. Thank you for staying with us, and we wish you all the best in your future. Keep in touch every now and then. Let us know how life is going. I will, I smiled. You both have been nothing but kind and easygoing with me. I am grateful to have... Before I could finish, there was a knock at the door. Giles took the stairs down to the front door. There were a few cop cars parked at the side of the curb with their sirens on. A fire truck was also arriving. Good evening, I'm Officer Mathis, and this is my partner, Officer Tobin. We received a call from a Charles. At that moment, Charles proceeded to the front door. That would be me. He guided the officers down into the basement. We all followed. The officers told us to wait outside in the living room. Charles was inside the room, telling the officers about the cracks and filling in with the story. One of the officers' voice was heavy, and it trailed into the living room. We heard him say, "I don't hear anything moving in there, but there is a decomposing kind of smell permeating through." As a convo between the officers and Charles continued, I turned to look at Giles, whose face was now pale. I walked to the fridge and got him a bottle of water. He didn't even touch it. Amelia was also not saying a word. Nadia and I looked at each other. "Giles," I asked, "what's going on?" For the first time, I saw Giles crumble from his manly demeanor to a guilty, almost broken human. The tears rolled down his cheeks. "There's no way out of this one," he said. "I never thought I'd see this day. It has been many years. Everyone has a past, Jordan. And I've done something I'm regretting. To this day, it eats me up inside. I don't know if you know this, but Amelia and I had a 10-year-old daughter 29 years ago. Yes, I heard the story, and I'm so sorry for your loss," I said. Amelia and myself felt like we lost the biggest gem in our life when she was diagnosed with HIV. It was like we had to wait for our child, Trina, to die. Her life was cut short because of a drug-driven whore. At that point, Amelia couldn't control her composure and began sobbing loudly. "Something had to be done," said Giles. "I wasn't going to sit around. I needed to avenge her death. Police couldn't locate the woman at all, so I took it upon myself to search for her and bring justice to my child. The whole point was to locate the woman, turn her into the police so she can rot in jail. But when I did find her down a narrow path in a wooded area, kind of secluded from the city 25 minutes from here, I tried to play the role of a customer. She was wearing a black dress that day with fishnet stockings. Her hair was short. She was pretty drunk. I rolled down my window, but I don't know what came over me, because when I thought of my daughter, I instantaneously grabbed my gun and shot the woman multiple times. I then put her in my car and brought her home. As Giles was reiterating me his story, I instantly remembered the nightmare I had, and the description matched the same woman who was murdered in my dream, and then I saw her in the backseat of my car, screaming for help. It was true. I wasn't insane. I then kept listening to Giles' story. "So Jordan, we had to get rid of the evidence. So Amelia helped me dismember the body, and then we needed a place to hide it. I looked at Nadia. She hunched over and then vomited on the carpet. I could feel myself get a little sick as well. But that's not all," said Giles. "I didn't want any other parent to endure what Amelia and I did. So I went back to the same street my daughter was attacked at and pretty much removed all the other sex workers around there. I was shocked, as well as appalled. Who was this guy, I thought? And why did he think all the hookers were terrible people just because of the isolated incident that happened to his daughter? How many victims were there, Giles?" I questioned. He took a deep breath and then exhaled. 5. My dream entered my mind again, of the one where I was out of body and I saw 5 other women surrounding my sleeping body. There definitely was no coincidences here. This was a serial killer, but an odd one. One who did it to be a hero to protect other kids too. So in my mind I thought, is this justified or pure evil? "Giles," I began, "and are those bodies also buried in the walls here?" Giles nodded and said yes. I ran to the kitchen sink and threw up until I felt like there was nothing left in my stomach. At that moment, firefighters came in with an axe. The cops retreated from the room and escorted all of us outside. Charles said we had to leave as our flight was scheduled for 11:20 p.m. The cops told him that they would be in contact with us for further questions. I was too sickened to embrace the Gradys, so I just waved goodbye from afar. I hugged Nadia, and one of the cops drove her home. I told Charles that Giles had given a full confessional to the killings, but my question to Charles was, how did he know that he needed to get the police involved? Well, Charles said, sometimes, Jordan, body language says it all. I've been in this type of environment to know when the red flags are going off. For example, I find it the perfect cover-up that the Gradys were so heavily involved in doing good for the community, like it was a distraction to hide their big secret so no one would suspect that they would even hurt a fly. Interesting, I said. That makes sense. Why didn't you pursue working in the investigation department, I asked. You have good instincts. I could have, Jordan, but I love what I do more. I feel like I'm doing something positive in the world rather than delivering bad news. Stuff like that never gets easy, you know? I hear you, I said. It's probably a lot of pressure. Once we got back to Philly and Charles drove me to my home, he gave me a long hug. I'll be sure to tell Officer Sharp you're back. I guarantee he will show up to hear the crazy case you were involved with. I believe it, I laughed. As I was turning the key to get into my house, Charles yelled from his car, "By the way, happy birthday." "My birthday isn't until tomorrow," I said. "You can wish me then." Charles drove off. When I got into the house, I felt like I was home again, and that everything was going to be fine. My phone pinged. It was Nadia. She told me the Gradys were arrested and the story spread like wildfire all over the news. I was in the mood to relive that scene, especially knowing that I was sleeping with dead human remains in the walls made my stomach churn. I refrained from watching TV. I texted Nadia back saying I'm home and that I missed her and that I would video call her in the morning. I took a long hot shower and went under the covers of my bed. I closed my eyes, and in my mind I spoke to the 5 lives that were lost, saying, "You're all free now." That night, and many nights to follow, I slept in peace. Hey Scary Story fans, I'm Suzanna Dutt, and thanks for listening to these short tales written and narrated by me. I hope you enjoyed them. If you have a creepy story that's fiction or non-fiction and would like me to share it in the next featured video, feel free to send it to me in the email in the description below. In the meantime, sweet dreams!